The second part of this call situation is Joshua had to get to a point at which he was courageous enough to call on the name of the Lord.
Amen.
The sun is standing. When Joshua called on the name of the Lord, God was right there to answer that call.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Amen.
Case in point, have you ever, many of us have cell phones. I know I do. I've gone through about 4 to 6 cell phones in the last year. It wasn't my fault that I went through that many cell phones in the last year. They just had all types of technological difficulties, and memory ran down on them, and just a whole host of things. But the last cell phone before I got the one that I have now, I remember picking it up to make a phone call. Put it to my ear. I'm standing there and I'm waiting for it to connect. And guess what? At times, the call would connect. And at other times, the call would not connect. Can you imagine living in a world with this all-powerful, all-knowing God, and every time you call him, one of two things happens. Either the call connects and you get through and God answers, or the call disconnects and you can't get your request answered. What kind of God would that be if he never answered when we called?
Yeah.
What kind of God would he be if he allowed the voicemail to pick up all the time? I don't know about you, but I don't too much care for voicemail. I appreciate voicemail because it allows me to get the messages that I missed when I couldn't take a call. But what happens when you don't even bother to answer your voicemail? I'm glad that God answers every time we call.
Oh, yes.
Joshua found himself in a situation with the tiredness and the weariness in his body that he needed God to answer when he called.
Oh, yes. Yes.
In the day and age that we live in, God is calling his people back to prayer.
Amen.
All over this nation, God is sending out a clarion call back to prayer, back to intimate time with him, back to worshiping him, back to studying his word. God is calling us and beckoning us into his presence. The question is this: are you going to answer that call, or are you going to allow it to go to voicemail? I would encourage you to go ahead and answer the call. Because when God calls you, he's not calling you just to have a casual conversation. God is calling you to give you instruction, to give you correction, and he's calling to have a personal relationship with you. When God calls you, he's calling with the intent of pushing you further into the job that he called for you to do. The sun is standing. Standing still. The next thing that the next point I'd like to make is this. Point number 2. When Joshua called for God, there was one key component that Joshua had to have. He had to have confidence. Confidence or faith that when he called on the name of the Lord, God would answer. How many of us have been in situations in our lives where we've gotten on our knees to pray and seek the face of God, and we've called out and asked God to answer our prayer, but in the back of our minds, we don't even have the faith to believe that God is going to answer. Well, Joshua had confidence that when I call on the name of the Lord, he is going to answer me. Joshua believed that the name of the Lord was a strong tower that he could run into and be saved. Joshua knew and believed and had evidence that every time he called on God, God showed up. Our problem today is we want God to come right here and right now. We live in an age of microwave technology.
and an internet age. When we send the email, it instantly gets to the person that we're emailing.